What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the shotgun meta in Season 2 now that the Infiltrator Pump Shotgun has been unvaulted. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below which shotgun you think is best in Fortnite right now. So this week, they re-added the Infiltrator Pump along with a few other weapons from Chapter 4. But with the Infiltrator Pump being unvaulted, it was essentially reworked as a weapon. Its damage and max damage were both increased, which is a pretty significant buff, but its fire rate was decreased, and that's why I say it was basically reworked. When you change the damage and the fire rate of a weapon, you're getting a pretty different weapon. And this shotgun looks good on paper, I think, but in actuality, in practice, I think it's much worse than the Sentinel Pump right now. The main thing it has going for it is range and consistency, which a lot of people do value heavily, but I really don't. The range on this is incredible, though. The Sentinel Pump starts to get damage fall off at 6.5 meters, while the Infiltrator Pump starts to get fall off at 12 meters. So it has basically double the initial range and then continues to do better from there. And it also has an incredibly tight pellet spread when you aim in, which is further going to add to your long range consistency. However, I don't overly value range in a shotgun, especially if what I'm comparing it to is decent. Like, it does have more range, that's true, but the Sentinel Pump's range is good enough for shotgun fights. Like 6.5 meters doesn't sound like a lot, but in game it's much more than I actually need out of my shotgun most of the time. If we had the choice of either like the Outlaw shotgun and the Infiltrator, then I feel like that range discrepancy would matter more. But the Sentinel Pump's range is good enough for most shotgun fights. And I've seen people kind of talk about how they want to play cover and just kind of get chip damage in with this Infiltrator Pump. And that play style would definitely work better with the Infiltrator than the Sentinel, 100%. But also, if I'm in that type of situation, I'll have a clip on screen now where like I'm in a fight where maybe the Infiltrator Pump's range would be relevant to me. If I'm in this situation, why would I just not be using my AR? Like, the AR is better. It's going to be doing more damage, or roughly similar damage at that range anyways, and it has a much higher fire rate, so my effective damage output in that situation is going to be better. And, you know, you could kind of jiggle peek off cover with this, maybe a bit better than you could with an AR, but I like using the burst anyways, and the burst also suits that really well. So that's a big drawback against this weapon for me. The advantage it has of range, I don't want to take advantage of because I want to be using my AR in those situations anyways. And so I don't really rate this highly as a weapon really at all. And the Infiltrator Pump does have a higher fire rate at 1. The Sentinel Pump has an 0.85 fire rate. So the damage or the fire rate difference really isn't that significant. And it doesn't change how I want to use the weapon. Like, I still feel like I want to like swap to something else between shots. And if I'm going to be playing that playstyle anyways, I want the one that's going to be hitting harder, which the Sentinel Pump does hit harder. We'll get to that in a moment. If they didn't touch the Infiltrator Pump's fire rate, if they left it at 1.2, then I feel like this weapon would have more of a case. Like, the fact that it has that added utility of range would maybe matter more. It has a better fire rate. You don't have to worry about swapping weapons. But the fact that it only has a 1 fire rate, I don't think in an actual close range shotgun fight, you're going to consistently do well versus decent players just not swapping. It's not fast enough to be an auto shotgun. And then the pullout time of it also feels quite bad. I kind of thought this was maybe just a me thing and just like me not liking the gun. But I talked about this on stream and a lot of other players were saying that the Infiltrator Pump's pullout time feels much slower to them than the Sentinels. And that is another thing that's going to hurt you when it comes to swapping weapons. If you're having to shoot this, swap to a spray weapon anyways because the fire rate isn't good enough, and then swap back to this, while it does have a higher fire rate than the Sentinel, so maybe you could swap back to your shotgun a little bit sooner. In actuality, it doesn't matter because the pullout time is kind of bad. So like it makes up for it in a way. And then the final knock against this, and this is going to be the biggest downside in my opinion, is going to be that it has a much lower damage cap. The damage cap was increased when they unvaulted it. They buffed its damage and max damage, but its max damage cap is still much worse than the Sentinels. And the way the shotguns work in Fortnite, a lot of times they have this damage cap, which is your maximum damage. Even if you were to go over that, you can't. So the Infiltrator Pump has a damage cap ranging from 155 to 175, depending on rarity. And you might be like, oh, that sounds great. Just hit 2 headshots with a gold one that are perfect, and you're good to go. The Sentinel Pump has a damage cap ranging from 170 to 195 for the legendary, and then 200 for the mythic. And so the green Sentinel Pump has the same max damage as a gold Infiltrator. And that might not sound like the biggest deal, but in a shotgun fight, you want to just be able to hit one incredibly, high damage shot. Hopefully swap to your spray weapon for the finish. If you don't finish with spray, you want to be able to swap back to your pump for, the actual finish. I only want to shoot my pump twice in a fight. Anything more than that, and I'm kind of playing the fight poorly, in my opinion. If your aim is good, you should only need a pump and a spray. And then if it's kind of midish, you should need pump, spray, back to pump. And that should be enough to get the job done. With this Infiltrator Pump, that's often not going to be the case. And damage cap aside, and this could be just my problem with the weapon or me not using it well, I feel like I'm just consistently hitting underwhelming shots with this weapon. I feel like I'm rarely getting close to that damage cap. I feel like I'm getting like 120s at best, which I know it can hit harder, but just in my practice, you guys know the shotguns in Fortnite are pretty inconsistent. Like the damage can vary. I feel like I hit hard much more consistently with the Sentinel Pump, and that is something that matters a lot in winning actual close range fights versus decent players. If I'm fighting somebody decent, they're not just going to sit there and let me shoot at them from like 8 meters away with my shotgun and play the fight that way. If I try to play that, they're going to beat me, and then when we get in close, I'm at a massive disadvantage using this Infiltrator. And when you're fighting somebody good in close range, they're going to be hitting hard with their pump, and the fact that you're using this Infiltrator, I think, is going to put you at a massive disadvantage. Just damage-wise, it doesn't feel as good to me. And that is the breakdown of this, I think. You gain some utility and range and consistency, and the fact that the aim down sight gives you a very tight spread. You get that utility, which could be useful, but you just have a much worse actual close-range fighting shotgun. And when I'm looking at my shotguns in Fortnite, what I value above anything else is going to be that how dominant it is in close range, or how good I think it is in close range fighting. The added utility doesn't matter if it doesn't serve the purpose of being a shotgun, and that added utility I feel like is also just beat out by somebody playing an AR in those situations. So I think this Infiltrator Pump is like a weird middle ground of a weapon. I don't think it does anything particularly well aside from range, but that isn't even something I want, as I've touched on a few times. And then another thing that I think is going to set you back using this is the fact that it's not in the black markets right now. I talked about this yesterday in the video I made about the Twin Mag AR. But in the black markets, you can't get these weapons. But you can get the Sentinel Pump in several of the black markets. Or if you prefer the Pump and Dump, you can get the Pump and Dump in several of the black markets. And that means you can consistently have access to a high rarity version of the Sentinel Pump. Or you could go to the train and get the Mythic one every game. Whereas the Infiltrator Pump, and this is an issue of me trying to make these videos and forcing myself to use it, I was often using like a green version when I could have had access to like a purple or gold Sentinel. And I feel like a lot of people aren't playing that way, where like they force themselves to use a weapon. But even if you massively prefer this, I think you're putting yourself at a disadvantage a lot of times, because you kind of just have to make do with looting. Whereas people using the other shotguns can easily get high rarity versions every game and then play around that and just have that constant advantage. But like I said, I'm not very high on this weapon. I checked out a lot of streams recently from players who I think are good, and I didn't see any of them using the Infiltrator Pump at all. They were all consistently using the Sentinel Pump. So I personally don't rate this weapon very highly. It has some utility, which maybe you could play around, but as far as being a close range weapon, I think this is significantly worse than the Sentinel Pump. And a lot of times in Fortnite, those close range fights versus a decent player are going to be the fights that's kind of like make or break. Like, it's not always the final fight that ends the game, but a lot of times I feel like I play a match and I have a good fight versus a decent player, and it was like either me or him were winning that game, you know? It wasn't coming down to the other people that actually made it in game. And if I'm in a close range fight versus somebody decent, I would rather have the Sentinel Pump 100% of the time. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.